What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants, powered by BetUS. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo. Today, taking a look at the offensive line, diving into the offensive line report. Going to look at some of these PFF grades and just kind of react to the way that they performed in week 2, because two solid performances from the Giants offensive line in a row. Pinch me. Am I dreaming? Is this real life? Is this real? Is the Giants offensive line finally good? Well, it kind of feels that way. And diving into some of the stats and taking a look at the film and all of that stuff, it looks like this offensive line has really turned things around. So credit to Carmen Brasillo. Love the signing of Jermaine Illuminor. All of that. Andrew Thomas still looks elite. There's a lot of positive takeaways. Again, in week 1, we talked about how great that offensive line looked. The offense didn't look great as a whole, and the Giants got blown out in week 1. But the offensive line was something that we viewed as kind of a silver lining. Well, now in week 2, again, the Giants lose. It's kind of a crummy time to be a Giants fan right now at 0-2. But what can we take away positively? Once again, the offensive line. Really solid performance from them. They only surrendered 8 pressures. Andrew Thomas was a stud. John Runyon was a stud. A lot of great performances up front from the New York Giants offensive line. So I'm excited to go ahead and dive into all of it. But first, before I do so, I want to take a look at some of these props on BetUS and give you guys my opinion and place a little bet here that I think is a pretty good one for Thursday Night Football, New York Jets versus New England Patriots. I'm really liking the under 38.5 points in tomorrow's game. I think I'm going to take that right here, throw a little 10-ski on it because, listen, here's my rationale. The New York Jets have not been scoring points. I think they have, 24 and 19 in their 2 games. They haven't topped 25 points in a game just yet. Neither have the New England Patriots. I think they have a high of 20 points through 2 games. Both of these offenses not really getting going. And we all know how Thursday night games go, right? Usually they're ugly, they're sloppy, they're just not the best games to watch. And sometimes they can be tricky to bet on. But I think when you factor all of that in and you kind of take a look at this being a division rival game with 2 strong defenses, this should be a ground-heavy game. A lot of time chewed on the ground. Not a ton of time of possession being used to throw the ball. I think it's going to be a time of possession game. Whoever wins time of possession probably wins that game, and it's probably due to having a strong rushing attack. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of points. I think there's going to be a few rushing touchdowns, and ultimately, I think under 38.5 is a safe bet. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. I'm going to place a little 10-ski on there, and boom, locking it in with BetUS, our sponsor on this video. Guys, make sure to go check out BetUS. 125% sign-up bonus when you go and sign up right now, matching your deposits. Really great stuff. BetUS Sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry. Link down below to sign up and get our little sign-up bonus as well. So make sure you go check that out. But let's go ahead and dive into this New York Giants offensive line report. The Giants did move up Pro Football Focus's rankings on all 32 of the offensive lines in the NFL this season through 2 weeks. The Giants last week were at place 29, which I thought was a little bit surprising, a little bit low considering how well the offensive line played in week 1. Obviously, the Giants got blown out in week 1, so maybe that played into their ranking. But in week 2, they moved up 3 spots. They're now at number 26. I think it's a little bit low still, but hey, we're moving in the right direction, which is something that we haven't really been able to say about the Giants offensive line in several years. But they're at 26, and PFF said that while they ranked 30th in pass blocking efficiency last season through 2 weeks, they're now in 9th place. Very solid. That means that this Giants offensive line, from a pass protection standpoint, has been a top 10 unit in the NFL so far. And honestly, it shows. I did the film breakdown on Malik Neighbors, posted that yesterday on the channel. Go check it out if you haven't seen it just yet. But as I'm breaking those plays down, there were a lot of clean pockets. Daniel Jones had a lot of time to operate, throw, hit Malik Neighbors, find him in space. Just a really great job from the Giants offensive line in week 2. The PFF says that the unit has allowed 17 pressures and 2 sacks on only 80 dropbacks through 2 games. That's a really nice rate. And they highlighted John Runyon for keeping a clean sheet against the Commanders. They said he didn't allow a single pressure this past week and has only allowed a pressure on 2.4% of dropbacks this season, which is on pace to be the best rate of his career. And they also mentioned that Andrew Thomas has just 1 pressure through 2 weeks. It was a sack, but it was just 1 pressure. 91.9 PFF pass blocking grade through 2 weeks. Leads all offensive linemen. Andrew Thomas, once again, on another all-pro campaign here through 2 weeks of the season, has looked like an elite blindside protector. He's been shutting down every edge rusher he's gone up against. He's let up only one pressure through 2 weeks. What more could you ask for from the guy? He really is arguably the most valuable player on this New York Giants offense and the absolute key to success for this season. Obviously, we need a lot of other factors to go our way. Need the quarterback play to be consistent. Need to keep feeding Malik Neighbors the ball. And we need Brian Dable to do his job as the head coach and not make any egregious errors like he did in week 1. But when we talk about scheming together an offense, finding ways to get receivers open, all of that is related to the offensive line. So far, the offensive line has been doing its job, but a lot of that does just have to do with how great of a player Andrew Thomas is. This offense can operate at such a high level because the blind side is always protected. Daniel Jones knows he doesn't have to look over his shoulder at all times. Sure, there's been some pressure up the middle. Greg Van Roten has been beat quite a few times, and he's had his moments of struggle, but we are seeing progress across the board from these linemen. And again, that blind side being protected does wonders for a quarterback. Let's go ahead and look at the grades, though, from week 2 here for the New York Giants versus the Washington Commanders. I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen with you all so you could take a closer look at the PFF grades and stats. The Giants offensive line, 85.9 pass protection grade right there from Andrew Thomas. And like I said, only 8 pressures surrendered this week versus the Washington Commanders. You had 2 attributed to John Michael Schmitz, 2 to Jermaine Illuminor, and 2 to Greg Van Roten. Now, what I will say here is, while it's true that John Michael Schmitz let up those 2 pressures, in my opinion, I'm seeing a lot of progress from the kid. I think he is starting to take that leap. And I know the PFF grades don't necessarily completely reflect that. A 63.9 pass blocking grade, but a 69.1 overall grade on PFF system is actually pretty high and a little bit above average. And he has a 69.5 run blocking grade. And that's where I've seen him pop. We've talked about Devin Singletary and how effective he's been as a runner. I mean, he's been tremendous. And if you look back at the way that he played in week 2, a lot of his yardage came right up the middle with John Michael Schmitz turning defenders, getting to the second level, and creating those blocks for Devin Singletary. And I've been very impressed with what I've seen from John Michael Schmitz. It hasn't been perfect. He still has some things to clean up from a pass protection standpoint, but he's getting there. He's making that progress, and that's huge for a New York Giants offensive lineman going into a crucial second season here with the team. And one other thing that I will note, like I said, Greg Van Roten struggling a little bit, but who could you put in his place? In fact, I wouldn't even argue that he needs to be benched or you tinker with this lineup at all. I think what's made this offensive line so great is the cohesion that it has. I mean, listen, we've seen Giants offensive linemen get put into the lineup, pulled out of the lineup, injury, oh no, okay, now we got to make another change. And when you keep looking at the way that this team has battled through that adversity over the past few years, well, they haven't battled it all that well. And so, in my opinion, I think that keeping that starting 5, whether some of those players in the starting 5 are struggling or not, it is so crucial for the Giants to just keep playing as one cohesive and continuous unit. Because I think that's where Carmen Bracillo has really made a difference. I think with this Giants offensive line, what we're seeing is a unit that's playing together. It doesn't feel like it's individuals having performances across the line like it did last year, because we would pull guys out of lineup due to injuries. Somebody else would step in and just try to do their job. But I feel like now with this unit, they're all doing one job together, if that makes sense. I feel like when we're watching them, especially in run blocking, say that the Giants are running some sort of duo kind of blocking scheme, double teams for the running back. Those double teams are really working together and creating those holes and openings for Devin Singletary. And then he's hitting those rushing lanes, and those duo blockers are then getting to the second level and creating some extra yardage for Devin Singletary. So I really think that's where we're seeing the impact of Carmen Bracillo. I just think this unit is actually moving like a unit for once. And that's a really big deal for this Giants offensive line, like I've said so many times. And then another thing, Jermaine Illuminor had 2 pressures. They both resulted in quarterback hits. Listen, guys, that's a good stat line. I know that he's tied for the lead in pressures surrendered in week 2, but understands that having only those 2 pressures from Jermaine Illuminor is a night and day difference to having 5 pressures surrendered in some games like Evan Neal was doing last year. when you're going from below, well below, like bottom floor offensive line play at the right tackle position, all the way up to average, that is an astronomical difference. So even if Jermaine Illuminor holds throughout the season as an average right tackle, it serves as a gigantic upgrade to what the Giants had at right tackle last season. And that's one of the reasons why this offensive line has been so much better through 2 weeks of the season. Those clean pockets that you're seeing, they're not collapsing in from those tackle positions. Because first of all, you've got an elite left tackle and you have an average to above right tackle. That is a winning recipe for the New York Giants. That is all they need. Truthfully, you don't need two elite all pros on either side of your quarterback. But if you've got one and then you've got somebody average on the other side, you should expect clean pockets throughout the season. And again, the interior of the offensive line has had its lapses, but from a pass protection standpoint, well, I mean, what more can you ask for from John Runyon? Like I said, zero pressure surrendered in week 2. He's been absolutely terrific, especially considering the contract that the Giants gave him. There was a lot of talk throughout the offseason, or at least leading into the offseason, about who could the Giants sign to upgrade this offensive line. And we pinpointed a few guys. Michael Onwenu with the New England Patriots. We had Robert Hunt, who was formerly with the Miami Dolphins. We talked about these guys being guards, maybe even tackles, however you wanted to view them. And they were really, really good players, but they ended up getting big bags, like 20 million plus per season type of contracts. Meanwhile, the Giants go ahead and sign John Runyon. He's coming off of a little bit of a down season in Green Bay. So they get him for 10 million per year, and he's bouncing back big time. What really was going on with John Runyon, why he was having a down year? Well, he was playing out of position on the right side of the offensive line. Truly, he is a left guard, and that's what he's been playing with the Giants. He's been playing alongside Andrew Thomas on that left side, and you can see the difference. He is playing at a very high level. That was actually a bargain signing, I would go as far as to say, now looking back on it, for the Giants to come in at a fraction, a half of the price as some of those higher end offensive linemen that were available on the market. Get John Runyon and stabilize the left side of the offensive line like this. That's really impressive stuff. Something to definitely be excited about there. So really like what we're seeing from John Runyon. Love what we're getting out of Jermaine Illuminor. Those 2 free agent signings we said were going to be crucial to turning this thing around, and they absolutely were. And like I said, JMS taking steps forward. Greg Van Roten, he's doing good enough, and that's all we need is good enough from that right guard. But I gotta, talk about the major upgrade that the New York Giants made here, and this is an obvious one to me. It's Carmen Brasillo as the offensive line coach. It feels like a night and day difference. The steps that we're seeing being taken week to week, the progress that we're seeing get made from some of these younger players like John Michael Schmitz, and the cohesion that we're seeing from these offensive linemen. Yeah, it helps that Greg Van Roten and Jermaine Illuminor have played together before and both played together under Carmen Brasillo. That definitely helps, and that's why that hiring was so great. One of the reasons why. But we're also seeing on the left side of the line those combination blocks and the progress that Andrew Thomas and John Runyon are making together. Well, I have to give some of that credit to Carmen Brasillo. And I think that John Michael Schmitz taking that step forward the same way that Andre James, Las Vegas Raiders center, formerly undrafted center, took a step forward under Carmen Brasillo. All of it. Look at the way that this unit is playing together. And I think that the obvious takeaway here is Carmen Brasillo was absolutely the right hiring for the New York Giants, and he's been making a significant impact. So I'm really excited by what we're seeing here from this offensive line. It's only 2 weeks into the season. I don't want to get ahead of myself and get overly excited. And I also have to keep in mind, offensive line, there's usually a lot of injuries at that position grouping. The Giants are going to have to brace for that at some point this season. It's very likely, one point or another, somebody gets banged up. Do they have necessary depth? How do they respond? And that's when I think we'll really get the highlight here from Carmen Brasillo as to how great of an impact he's made on these players. Does a Josh Azidu have to step into the lineup at some point this season? What does Josh Azidu look like when that happens? Because, well, last year under Bobby Johnson, nobody looked good, but we had a lot of these young players pushed into the lineup, and they looked not only not good, but they looked atrocious. So if they step into the lineup this season because of injuries, kind of making a spot start or, closing out a game in the second half because someone got injured mid-game, okay, well, how do they look on the field? That's when we're really going to see the developmental aspect of Carmen Brasillo's coaching style. And I think that's going to be great. And again, a lot of the pressures that have been generated sometimes by design. Maybe they're letting Jones get pressure and sending in an extra blitzer and they're getting the ball off. And then another thing to keep in mind is a lot of the times they're not getting much pressure because credit to Brian Dable, he's been calling a lot of great play calls where you've got Jones on a bootleg or a rollout. So there is no opportunity for pressure, or he's protecting eight. The Giants are blocking eight guys and only running two receivers out there, and Malik Neighbors is getting open, like we saw a lot versus the Commanders. Those are things that the Giants couldn't do last year because A, they couldn't trust their offensive line, whether it was 5 men or 8 men, and B, they couldn't trust their wide receivers. They didn't have a Malik Neighbors who gets open every single time he runs a route versus man coverage. Now they have both of those things. So this offense can really open up. Now it's just on Daniel Jones to make those throws, make those calls at the line of scrimmage, and get this thing going. So great offensive line play. We know what it can do for a team. It can do absolute wonders for an NFL offense. And the Giants going from pretty much league worst to at least average or higher, I'm pretty excited. So really, really happy to give you guys a positive grade report here on the New York Giants offensive line for the second week in a row. And this is going to be a weekly series. Every week, I'm going to give you guys the offensive line report. So stay tuned to that. Look forward. And of course, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. And let me know what you thought about this offensive line. Any room for improvement? Do you think it's a 2-week mirage? Or are you really feeling comfortable and confident that the Giants finally have a good offensive line? I'm starting to feel that way, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down below and make sure to check you out in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.